Buenos Ilamnala. We respectfully acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Coast Salish people, where we live, learn, and play. Before we adopt the agenda, I'd like to add a couple of items. Item 7.2.4, bar courses. And item 9D, Board Education and Business Committee, Early Learning Committee Terms of Reference. Should I maybe read that again? Nope. Okay. And I'd like to switch under recognition and delegations, item 4, just switch items A and B. So we'll start with B. Okay, ready for the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to minutes of May 7th, open board meeting. Need a motion to adopt the minutes. Moved by Trustee Kevlin, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to recognition and delegations, and the first one is Ben Miller, silver medal winner for collision repair at Skills Canada. 2019 National Competition in Halifax.
You're stealing my thunder, Trustee. Congratulations.
Thank
I'm
you.
Elizabeth Croft, and I wanted to say a special thank you and recognition to you today. We would like to recognize you, Ben Miller, a Cowichan secondary student who won silver in collision repair at this year's Skills Canada National Competition way out there in Halifax. Ben recently completed his youth train welding C ticket. Train as in training or train?
Trained.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. Either is cool.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and as a youth apprentice at Croffett Auto for automotive service. Is that right?
Proper break. Sure.
Croffett Brake and Wheel.
Yeah.
Okay. Of note, Ben has been coached by Isherwood Auto Body for collision repair for a few days a week since December to prepare him for both provincial competition and for nationals. So we're super proud of Ben and congratulate you on your accomplishment in collision repair skills national competition.
Thank you so much, Ben. Congratulations from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Croft. Trustee Croft, as you know, is our liaison to careers, and so it's been her excitement to do our presentations from our careers program. Trustee Doman?
Yeah, I just would like to shout out to our staff. When I was at the Skills BC competition, there was a whole bunch of Cowichan staff running around like giddy little kids, watching these guys work, and they were kind of walking on air because of how well they were doing, and not just Ben, but all of them. So thanks, Larry.
And I think the whole board can say thank you to the careers department led by Larry. We really appreciate the amount of work and the success of the kids registered in the programs. Thank you. Item B is related to students from provincial French public speaking competition. And this time there'll be several trustees involved because several of the students come from different schools where we have French immersion. So the Board of Education would like to recognize 5 of our students who competed in this year's Pan-Provincial French Public Speaking Competition, Concours d'Oratoire, held on May 4th at Simon Fraser University in Surrey. Concours is a showcase and celebration of excellence in French language education. Participating students develop their public speaking and relationship building skills in French. and ultimately the confidence to express their ideas clearly. These capacities are highly valued in today's global society, making these students more adaptable and employable in a dynamic and competitive landscape. As effective communicators, these students will become the leaders of tomorrow. The board is pleased to recognize the following concours participants. Emma Ansar from McCall Cobble Hill, presenting trustee Hutchins. And Emma won second place in the grade 7 French immersion category for her speech. And thank you so much, Emma, for entering the competition and winning second place. Good job. Coralie Magnan from McCall Mount Provost competed in the grade 6 Francophone category with her speech, and Trustee Kemmler is presenting. And Nerva Megabend from McCall Cobble Hill competed. Oh, she's not here. Well, I will still publicly thank her and congratulate her. Competed in the grade 7 Francophone category. And Trustee Hutchins, thank you. And Chantel Westgate from McCall Quamachin.
She's not present.
Well, she competed in the grade 8 immersion category. Trustee Croft represented. And Dave Carlin. Not present. Well, I get to present to you. She competed in the grade 10 immersion category. Thank you very much, and to her. So congratulations to all 5 of our competitors. We have one more note of recognition, and that is to Trustee Joe Thorne. And I get to present to him and congratulate him for being selected from throughout BC to be appointed to the BCSTA Indigenous Education Committee for the next 3 years as their elder and knowledge keeper.
Don't come.
Congratulations. Okay, now we get to do the other business. Report of closed meeting. Sandquist.
Thank you. The board met in closed session prior to this meeting. We had a delegation and we talked about facility and contract issues. We'll be going back into closed session following.
Thank you. Moving to item 6, old business A action list on page 13. And we'll just pause and say farewell to our French.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Thank you for coming. Page 30, action list. So, under meeting with local governments, we have one other local government that we have not met with yet, and we have the date selected for June 17th. And it appears that we are meeting in the palace at 4 o'clock. So I'm hopeful that all of us will be able to attend. Is there anything else that staff would like to update? Superintendent.
With regard to the Child Care Spaces funding application, what I understand is that there will be a June 11th Early Learning Committee meeting for potential applications to be discussed.
Thank you. Several of the other things seem to be completed. We have had lots of people mention the pride flag and how good it is to see that flying there. Anything else that staff or trustees want to talk about on the action list? Moving back to item 6B, Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services. You recall that the invitation for us to present to that committee was discussed at the last meeting, and it was referred to staff and myself. We did talk about that, Superintendent, Secretary, Treasurer, and myself, and given the amount of events and activities that we are currently involved in this month, we decided that it would be best for us not to try to do that one as well. So any comments on that, or is that good to go? Okay, moving to item 7, Superintendent of Schools. Great.
Okay, with regard to 7.11, I would like to request Associate Superintendent Longridge to review the briefing note with regard to violence in the workplace and student mental health.
Mr. Longwood, would you like to come up to the table here so that people can hear you a little bit better, perhaps? Thank you.
Thank you. To the chair, if I may. Everybody has a copy of the briefing note before them. I will try not to read through the entire briefing note, but I will highlight some of the elements contained within. In regard to the background, we do, just to let you know how this is a WorkSafe expectation in order to keep employees safe in the workplace. And they define violence as the attempted or actual exercise by a person other than a worker of any physical force so as to cause injury to a worker and includes any threatening statement or behavior which gives a worker reasonable cause to believe that he or she is at risk of injury. The potential for violence exists whenever there is direct interaction between workers and non-workers. Employers must provide a workplace as safe from the threat of violence as possible. If there's a risk of violence in the workplace, the employer must set up and instruct workers on procedures or eliminate or minimize the risk. Employers are responsible for investigating certain incidents or near misses that take place in the workplace and submitting an investigating report to WorkSafe. These investigations help employers and WorkSafe determine why an incident happened and what can be done to prevent similar situations in the future. In order to accomplish this, this situation and the above expectation does create a significant challenge, as many of the incidents which occur in the school context involve students with complex learning needs that may include behavioral challenges that can be potentially harmful to the adults who are responsible for their care and or support their learning. The district is therefore placed in a challenging position of supporting the rights of students to be provided access to an inclusive, safe, and caring learning environment, and as an employer, the district is expected to provide a workplace as safe from threat of violence as possible. So that's the context. So in order to address these challenges, the district does has a number of mechanisms. First of all, I'll just go over the actual process currently in place under the expectation of WorkSafe. An incident occurs and is reported to the school principal and vice principal. The piece that I'll add to that is also there's an investigation at that time in regard to what happened, how it occurred, and that's what gets reported moving forward. The administrator has staff fill out the violent threat assessment form, a copy of which is sent to the district health and safety manager and to the administrator of support services should the incident involve a student who has diverse learning needs, i.e. a ministry designation. A risk reducing plan, again based on the information that obtained through the investigation, and through review of the documentation. The safety plan behavior intervention plan is generated either immediately by the school team or after feedback from the health and safety manager or support services administrator, which means that we also look at it and see what other outside needs of support. And that's why in number 4, the district support teachers are deployed to support the development and implementation of that safety plan, should that need be. So there's district staff involved, as well as expertise from any of our itinerant staff in building the safety / risk plan commensurate with trying to ameliorate the repetition of incidents. Over the past 2 years, the school district, and in particular support services, has focused on building capacity, skills, and knowledge and behavior intervention with the objective of reducing incidents of violence and or behavior that interfere with the student learning and success, as well as potential risk to individual employees. So support services has reorganized staffing to create a district counselor position focused on supporting school with students who exhibit challenging behavior or mental distress. And that's to work with building the plans and as well as educating staff and supporting staff that are experiencing those incidents. We have created a district educational assistant position to support and train other educational assistants working with students who have complex needs. Again, in order the more information people have and the skill development increases, they're able to ameliorate those situations. We have district support teachers who consult with school teams, resource teachers, and learning support teachers, focusing on students with complex learning needs and building behavioral intervention plans. Again, we've also incorporated and partnered with, which isn't in this briefing note, but just to add some information, with POPARD, which is the Provincial Outreach Program for Autism and Related Disorders. And they provide 1-week training for staff, and which we have been doing over the last 2 years. And we have done so far trained 6 staffs of 6 elementary school staffs, and in the summer there's been 2 other opportunities to get this training, and that's we've trained 56 educational assistants in those 2 summer learning opportunities. Again, that's to not only understand autism in the school context, but also talks about how to be planning and to be aware in regard to some of the behavioral considerations involved with that perceived disorder. To continue, all of our district itinerant professional staff, and that would include school psychologists, speech and language pathologists, counselors, occupational therapists, vision and hearing support specialists, consult with the schools and support students with behavioral interventions. And that's working with staff at the same time in regard to either model or help develop some of those plans with staff inclusively. We're in the 2nd year of a 3-year collaboration with Shelley Moore, who has been providing workshops to staff and understanding inclusion, creating inclusive learning communities, IEP development, and tools to support diverse learners, which also through IEP development includes dealing with behavior as part of that IEP development. We are, over the past year, the district has increased the number of school staff trained in the Violent Threat Risk Assessment, or VTRA protocol, which is connected but separate from the WorkSafe training mechanism or the WorkSafe procedure, which is employee-driven. The district has also partnered with the Ministry of Education to pilot a trauma-informed practice program that is intended to become province-wide within the near future. Understanding that a lot of behaviors that occur within schools are related to previous trauma and some mental health challenges that exhibit themselves through some behavior needs. And again, how to address that, understand it, and plan for it. In regard to some of the specific programs over the last 2 years, I would say, since particularly since we reorganized and hired the district behavior specialist. We have begun understanding behavior module 1, and which is the foundations level. We have 484 staff members have been trained to date. The module is designed to lay the groundwork for understanding and implementing the district framework for behavior support, and is essential for effective participation in later modules, so it's the first step. To continue, we have developed a behavior intervention plan, which is understanding behavior module 2, which is building actual behavior plans and complete pathways, and 248 staff have been trained to date in that area, and that's over the last 2 years. Understanding behavior module 3, which is again another level up. We're developing that, and that's still in the process of being rolled out. But we do have an understanding behavior coaching session, which is a train the trainer piece, which is again more complex, and we have trained 42 staff to date to be coaches, and that means that they can train other individuals on staff. So it's a way to get maximum amount of impact for people that are, you're not bringing in experts all the time or sending people out, you're actually able to train people within your organization to train other people, and so you're able to spread that out at a much more effective level. We also have trained 145 staff in CPI, which is nonviolent crisis intervention. And that's really teaching and helping people understand when something occurs, how to intervene with that, keep yourself safe and the student safe, and everybody safe, and how to control a situation so that you can ameliorate it more effectively rather than see it escalate. You have the ability to de-escalate that behavior. Understanding that behavior is closely connected to mental health and mental wellness. The district has supported a number of mental health initiatives, and as you are aware from a previous presentation to the board, we have been engaging over the last 2 years in regard to building capacity, in regard to people understanding and having mental health literacy. And so we have conducted wellness and mental health literacy training for a significant amount of staff through our NID days, one of which we did throughout the 4 regions of the district and 4 different sites. And we had, I believe, a significant amount of, if not all, anybody who was in attendance on those days, a significant amount of staff. And that's all aspects in all areas, from transportation to secretarial, to teachers, to educational assistants, including some community members that benefited from mental health literacy training. Again, through teammentalhealth.org, we have also, this began with training, the trainer model that we brought in, where several of our counselors and other teaching staff and administrators went to UBC and were trained in mental health literacy and how to work with students in regard to dealing with mental health issues and having students be able to understand it and have mental health literacy. And so again, we've continued to that training, and 19 more train the trainer staff will be going to UBC this summer, and so we'll have more people trained, and so we can again exponentially increase our capacity within our schools to be able to work and have students understand mental health and mental health literacy, and not only that, acquire tools in which they can support themselves, and that adults in the building can support students and each other. So far, and this initiative really started last fall, but so far, and this is teens mostly, we're talking grade 9 through 12, we have all of the high schools. We have all of Cal High, all grade 10 students have been facilitated training in mental health literacy. We've had so far half of Francis Kelsey, grade 10 students, and it's driven through their phys ed program. We have 20% of CVAL grade 10 through 12 students, and we're still waiting for a little bit of information in regard to one of the secondary sites. So all of them have had some training through grade 10 or otherwise into expanding the students' knowledge and awareness of mental health and mental wellness and well-being. We also have introduced the CALM curriculum, and that is for K1, in which it helps students early understand mood, understand their behavior associated with that mood, and we have supplied kits. We have purchased 22 kits that I believe it says 20 there that we're distributing to schools and doing the commensurate training, because it comes with training. You can't do it without training, so each school has to commit to that. And so that is starting right from when kids enter school in how to understand the behavior and the feelings that they're experiencing and how to self-regulate those. Connected to that at the next level, there's the EASE, and that's Everyday Anxiety Strategies for Educators. During May 2019, we have released staff to be trained in EASE. This is a relatively new program for us, but we're introducing it again to get those kids that are after kindergarten grade 1, but elementary age, into again connected to the tools we get from Ministry of Children and Family Development to introduce to anxiety prevention initiatives and everyday anxiety strategies. Again, this is to help with self-regulating and to help people control behavior that sometimes they don't know where it's coming from, but it gives them tools in order to ease that level of anxiety within the school context. Now, as well, if you look at the actual recommendations here at the end, and looking at some of the data that we've looked at in regard to this area, I would suggest that we review and revise our WorkSafe incident process in regard to workplace violence involving students. I would suggest that we develop a communication and education strategy on the WorkSafe reporting, investigation, and follow-up process. We have several processes from VITRA, which is specifically designed to keep schools safe, particularly in those situations where you don't always recognize a behavior as being potentially unsafe. But that is a process that includes school personnel as well as partners within the community, RCMP, and mental health workers. But that's a different process than the WorkSafe process that's designed to actually focus only on employees. And we also have, when it comes to behavior planning, some very specific sets of behavior planning tools that we also have to make sure that those aren't all getting conflated because they each have different purposes. And so we have to make sure that people understand which type of plan we're looking at, and then how we build and work together in order to support the learning of the student, at the same time making sure that the people working with those students are safe. I would suggest that we meet monthly with the safety manager and the health and wellness coordinator. That was done, or is done currently to some degree. I would suggest that we enhance that and have greater and more frequent communication, not just as forms come in, but preparatory to that, and in regard to reviewing our process and how we integrate those three roles, and that we share information to help each other. Increase the opportunity to build capacity with staff working with students who display violent or challenging behavior. Again, that's that ongoing pieces, a number of initiatives that you've seen have happened and are gaining momentum over the last 2 years, and we look at increasing that. Because if we increase the skills with the adults, it will certainly help keep themselves safe, as well as keep those that they are responsible for and to keep them safe as well from self-harm or harming others. And continuing with the district initiatives in the area of behavioral intervention, i.e. VITRA and mental health, and continue to support the development of behavior intervention planning. Again, those last the three are connected to continuing to build capacity as we have done, and to make sure that we follow through with that. And we always look at it, we're always learning, we always benefit from the information we receive, but we must look at it closely and realize what challenge are we looking to resolve.
Thank you for the excellent report, very comprehensive. Questions from trustees or comments, Trustee Croft?
Wow, thank you so much. That's what an enormous suite of learning that you're providing for everybody. I have 2 questions, if that's okay, Madam Chair. Do we consult teachers and EAs when it comes to training content?
I think in the past that's occurred. In regard to some pieces where you have expectations of knowledge, it's when you're looking at, there might be knowledge gaps, you try to ascertain those. I think you look at, in looking at some of the data we receive and some of the safety plan mechanisms, that gets identified through processes and actually through discussions when processes don't work. So I don't believe we've directly solicited through some mechanism in regard to that, but quite often it's quite specific, and the needs are specific, so you have to look at those contextual things. It's not always a very broad-based, everybody needs to know this.
Okay. And my follow-up question is, how are we tracking the efficacy of these initiatives?
With an IEP and with a behavior plan, that generally tracks. The expectation is it's reviewed and it's tracked. Some of the particular intervention plan have a tracking component to it. And I'm not saying everything is always done in the detail that it may need, and that's something that we need to continually examine and have a conversation about.
One more from
One
Trustee
more,
Croft.
sorry, that wasn't the direction I was going, but I appreciate that information. I guess I was wondering if, because we've identified violence in the workplace as a concern, do we compare this data and training with the data that's generated by the amount of violence or the degree of violence? Is that ever compared?
It is when I look at it, but some of the information that we have, I would say, given some of the recommendations I've made, I think we need to look at it more specifically and have the right information. I think that some of the information sometimes is generic and open to misinterpretation or lacks context. I think we have to be very laser-like in regard to what we're looking at and to understand exactly what those contexts are and what specifically needs to be addressed. And I think we need to have some people with the right level of information and expertise to analyze some of that. And that is what we're beginning to do as we look at how forms are completed, how the investigations are conducted, and so forth.
Thank you, Trustee Cameron.
I too just want to say thank you. It's really thorough. It's really good to know all this is going on. Regarding the CALM program and the EASE program, I'm really excited that we're starting right at kindergarten because we're identifying, or we're hearing so much about anxiety in our elementary schools and our high schools, and catching that so early, how long do you think it'll be before we see if that's gonna be making a significant change, if it's going to calm the anxieties down that we're seeing?
Well, it's early days since we're just doing it, but that's the intent, and again, we're looking at ways to track that, and that the communication piece and the interconnection between systems that are designed quite differently, our behavior intervention system and all those things you saw, and a WorkSafe development plan that was really developed to protect people from saw blades that were sticking out of the wall, or not locking out an electrical outlet so that people would accidentally, or a wire that it would accidentally hurt them. So dealing with human beings is a little more complex, but I think that some of those early interventions, together with the training of the adults, I think we're hoping, and we will be tracking to see if it has a direct ameliorating effect on student behavior and those potential incidents that occur.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from trustees? Well, I'd just like to thank you again for the report, and to thank you and the team in support services around trying to help our staff and our students, as this is a difficult societal context around violence in the workplace, as well as mental health for everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And back to superintendent.
Okay, so I have a bit of a lengthy report, but I'll try to speed through it. When you have an awesome district who has a lot of things on the go in the months of May and June, there's a lot to say. So firstly, I want to talk about the OECD, which was the BC Education Conference that the senior team attended for 2 days on May the 22nd and 23rd. And I want to start by saying that it really was the launch of the Organization for the Economic and Cooperative Development, and it was a launch related to the future of education and skills education 2030. So keeping that in mind, we had 2 full days, and we started with a traditional Musqueam opening at the event, and then right after that we had a keynote address from Premier John Horgan, along with an address from the Minister of Education, Rob Fleming. And then in addition to that, Scott McDonald, our Deputy Minister, he did a full probably half day of how did BC get to where we are today. So it was a very fabulous presentation in terms of the historical context and where we are and what is our current reality. So we were really celebrating the BC educational context for the entire international attendees who were there to hear about us, and so we were really showcasing what we were doing on the first day. So with regard to that, we had a panel from some BC educational leadership, I'm going to call them gurus, and one of our very own, Denise Augustine, was on that panel, along with Glenn Hansworth, Judy Halbert, Linda Kaiser. So these are educational leaders in our BC context. And what they shared with the entire 200 plus attendees in the room was what do we need to hold on to? So they shared all of the things that they thought was important for what we should internationally hold on to with regard to creating a high-performing educational system. After that, we heard from Laura Boyd, a neuroscientist from UBC. Our very own Secretary-Treasurer, Jason Sandquist, was very, very intrigued by that presentation, where she spoke about the science of learning and the developing brain. I'm sure he would share a little bit more with you about that at a later date. And then we heard from Kim Schonert. She focuses on social emotional learning from UBC as well, so she had a fulsome presentation. And then again, Jo Krona, and she is our First Nation Educational Steering Committee, who really focuses on Indigenous learning. And her 3 topics would be that how we need to support our Indigenous learners would be to continue to collaborate, challenge each other, look at the graduation with options for our kids so that they can be proud when they leave our system, and that increase the learning and building the capacity of non-Indigenous people to support our efforts around truth and reconciliation. So the second day, more or less, was unveiling the work from the OECD international community, and its real aim was to help countries find answers to two very big questions. And these were questions: what knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values will today's students need to thrive and shape their world? And secondly, how can instructional systems develop these knowledge, skills, values effectively? And so that was the two big questions that they focused on. And so there's a paper, and I would actually like to have this paper copied for all of you, because I think it has some really interesting comments in here. But it talked about a shared vision that was around that our students will need to be responsible and empowered, placing collaboration above division and sustainability above short-term gain. And they looked at 3 challenges for our rapidly changing world. The first is the environment and our concern around climate change. Second would be an economic challenge, and third would be a societal challenge. And it looked at the need for broader educational goals, which would be individual and collective well-being, everything I think we're talking about today, and about how do we give our learners agency and navigating through a very complex and uncertain world, because we are going to count on them. And then lastly, the competencies to transform our society and shape our future, that these, they call them the transformative competencies, and they include this: creating new value, reconciling tensions and dilemma, and taking responsibility. And so at the end of that, the constructs that underpin the competency include adaptability, creativity, curiosity, and open-mindedness. So that's a bit of the overview of the 2 days. At the very end, myself and Associate Superintendent Coors, we led discussion groups that were built on a panel of what they called provocateurs. And so therefore, this panel shared with the attendees some very interesting questions around provocating our thoughts around leading in the future around 2030. And so we led some discussion groups from all of our educators across BC in terms of providing feedback and where do we go next within our BC educational context. So that was our 2 days, summed up in about less than 5 minutes, but I will share this document with the entire board, because I think it's very relevant to our future work.
Thank you. Really appreciate the time that you've taken to report on the conferences that you go to. It's important knowledge base for us too, as we work toward decision making in the areas in which you're working. Thank you.
It was very excellent. So now I'll move on to a few more items. We are honoring and celebrating Pride Month, and so we have a number of events going on, but here's one in particular from Cowichan Secondary School. The Rainbow Club is planning on participating in the parade. They also have club members who attended Love is Love conference in Victoria last week, and they are also looking to plan a Gender Identity Recognition Day all before the end of the year. So that's one school who's doing some work around Pride Month. I also want to talk about the fact that we'll be going through a strategic planning process, the board. And so in the next month, we have a meeting starting tomorrow with our senior team to look at some data across our system and where do we want to go next. And then we'll be meeting with the board on Saturday, June the 8th, as well as coming back as a senior team to look at how we could actually support the Cowichan Valley School District strategic plan, and look forward to, in my hopes, having a bit of a draft that we can actually have our advisory groups have some input in the future in the fall. So that's a lot of work that we're doing right now. And then I want to talk a bit around the fact that last night I was able to attend the International Student Program year-end celebration with a number of people from this room. an excellent celebration. There were 30 international student graduates. You can tell what kind of a strong program we have. A number of them were celebrated. It was, when you speak about student agency, when you watch our students MC the event and how well they do, and then some of the universities that they are going to attend in their future. So we've given them a great opportunity in this district in the International Student Program. And so that leads me to make comment that this is an entire month of school year-end celebrations, inclusive of awards and graduation ceremonies that will be coming up that many of us will all attend. So now I would like to ask Claire if she would like to bring up some of the photos that are related to a number of district events that I'll talk through. And so you might just want to maybe sit back and relax a little bit and enjoy a bit of the slideshow as I go through this. Firstly, we had a district event, the Poetry Slam. This annual Poetry Slam competition took place at Chimena Secondary this year. Students stepped to the stage to perform original works for our panel of community judges. Students were snapping, clapping, drumming, and otherwise supporting each other as they came to the stage to be judged. In the end, there was a tie for third place, and as awards were passed around, the group came together to celebrate and recognize the strength of the shared experience, the support of their peers, and their art. The next one, district scholarships. During the week of May 13th and 17th, students participated in the district scholarship presentations held at each of the district secondary schools and at CVOP. Topics of the presentations ranged from physical activity, community service, fine arts, technology, and trades, and applied design, science, and technology. This year there are 87 awards valued at $1,250, totaling $108,750, and winners will be announced at their school's award presentations. Moving along to the next photo. The sorry, maybe the next two don't have photos. We'll just hold that thought for a second. The Hector and McIntosh speaking competition that was held on May the 13th. The finals of the 39th annual Hector McIntosh public speaking competition were held on May 13th, and the results of students from SD 79 schools were as follows. Category 2, grade 7 and 8, third, Bench Elementary. Category 3, grade 9 and 10, second place, Francis Kelsey, as well as third place. So another great district event. And then I do want to comment that our district student advisory committee students were at the Rotary Club of the Duncan Spelling Bee for Literacy on May the 8th. We were well represented by myself, Secretary Treasurer Mr. Sanchez, and Trustee Kemmler at the Duncan Rotary Spelling Bee. And the students again chose the name The Wannabes, which added a really beautiful element. I think that we were the only table of students there. And we did okay, I'll say. But the words were very challenging, and so I think it was the second year in a row that the United Church took the award, and I likened it to the fact that they maybe, because they read a lot, maybe they have time to do a little more reading than we did. So anyway, so that was a great event. And then moving on to the Mini O Elementary track meet. I know here's where we have some photos. This was our 5th annual event held on May the 17th at the Cowichan Sportsplex. There was a lot of sunshine and many smiles. There was face painting, freezies, and trading cards, making this year's event a huge success again. There was an official opening, including a march-in from the North Cowichan Duncan RCMP. The day started with the 16-meter running race. The students paired off against one another and raced against time. And the Cowichan Valley School District's very own professional athlete, who is our Secretary Treasurer Jason Sundquist, who is well known in the triathlon world. Okay, and he raced every race against our Little Minio competitors. And unfortunately for Jason, our young athlete showed up with their game faces on, and he didn't even win a single race.
Last every time.
And as the races wrapped up, students were able to get their Jason Sandquist trading cards signed, and some even challenged him to a dance-off. And you can bet who won that as well. So it was a very amazing day and much appreciated by all of our athletes, and I really appreciate the participation. And that little youngster up there in the photo, he definitely was one of the most exceptional dancers that we had on the track that day. So well done and really a great shout out for the International Student Program, who puts together a very excellent day for our young athletes. The next was our Métis Cultural Week that was held on May 6th through the 10th. Students from around the Cowichan Valley School District were able to experience a little bit of historic Métis life at the Multicultural Week at the Glenora Trails Head Park. This year, grades 4 and 5 students from Cheminnes Elementary, Crofton, École Mount Vaux, and Maple Bay, and George Bonner were able to share in this experience. Student explored food and language, the Making and Bandit, transportation with the real Red River Cart, and Voyager canoe, trading and trapping, music and dance, dancing the jig to the fiddle music, leisure activities with games and crafts, and learned about the buffalo hunt with some pemmican. And these experiences were built on work done before the week and an exploration of Métis life and history. And that was a special thank you to our Cowichan Valley Métis Nation for their teachings. Okay, moving on to our next district event, because we have many here. The cardboard boat building. Students from across our district made a splash with the annual cardboard boat building event, which pitted these burgeoning engineers with their cardboard masterpieces against water, time, and the absorbent qualities of cardboard. As we can see, the boats were constructed in just a few hours early in the day, quickly christened, and then launched into the calm waters at the Cowichan Aquatic Center, much to the bewilderment of the veteran lane swimmers nearby. After racing their not-so-speedy boats across the 25-meter pool, the next test of the students' engineering prowess was the time float and the test of weight-carrying capacity. Lucky volunteers donned life jackets and never so gently slid into the boats, and student after student piled in, sometimes 2, often 4, and remarkably 8 in one boat. Finally, after valiantly serving their purpose, the boats were dredged from the depths and carted outside to dry off. All in all, another ship-shaped day in the Cowichan Valley School District. Thank you, District Principal Matten, for supporting that endeavor. Next up would be the Clam Gardens trip. Last month, our students were able to participate in Clam Garden Science and Culture Camp at Russell Island in the Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. The Homegrown Science and Culture Camp brought together dedicated Parks Canada staff and our own Cowichan Valley School District to create this unforgettable experience. Now in the 6th year, this camp has seen scores of our students visit and do work on historic clam gardens that were created by Indigenous peoples as a way to better support the resource management of clams and other aquatic food sources in their traditional territories. Students have the opportunity to do this important work as well as learn about amazing research going on at the gardens and around the parks in Canada. Elders, with stories passed down from generations, gave students the foundation of historical knowledge through an Indigenous perspective before modern archaeological techniques were shown. After an amazing traditional lunch, students were able to head to different stations and explore it in ways they'd never before. The trip was a wonderful day filled with music, song, food, friends, and a wonderful exploration of our region's history. Heichka to all involved in giving this gift of learning to our students. We're not through yet. We have the Youth Action Day Leadership Conference on May 15th at Quamachin. This annual Youth Action Day was hosted at Quamachin School. It was a Youth Action Day 2019, was for youth, by youth. Through the Compassionate Leaders Project of the Cowichan Intercultural Society, the student planning team worked hard to organize this event for student delegates to attend from secondary schools in the Cowichan region. There was an MC, keynote speakers, a musical guest, free lunch, and participating students were able to pick from 2 workshops to attend. Thank you to Cowichan Intercultural Society Compassionate Leaders Project, the student planning team, and community partners for providing this opportunity for our grades 8 to 12 students again this school year. Okay, moving on to schools. So in our West schools, Paulson Elementary. Paulson Elementary students have been busy this last week building and rebuilding structures with their classes and in multi-age groups at outside playtime with sticks from the Friendship Forest. The school staff love how they are so creative with their building and imaginative game play. They stress the importance of safety and inclusivity in their explorative nature play, and we are pleased with how this is going. North Schools in Crofton Elementary. Crofton Elementary School performed a rendition of Cinderella and the Substitute Fairy Godmother. The one-day play was hosted at the Crofton Community Center and saw a nearly packed house for the family-friendly event. Students have been working on this play since January, and it was great to see the community turn out to support the students once again. Thank you to the teachers, staff, and students for all the extra work they put into making this a resounding success. In our South schools, Bench Elementary, the Bee Project. Bench Elementary students have spent the last number of months deeply learning about bees and their interconnectedness to our foods, communities, history, and culture, focusing on deep listening, respecting others' perspectives, and Indigenous peoples' perspectives. The students have built new bee hives, managed bees and other insects, and studied and improved landscapes to benefit and protect bees. This complex hive organism needs tending, and inspecting hives and looking for honey weren't the only things happening for the bees on Mr. Lowe's farm, but there was the larger ecology project focused on place-based learning and changes in the built environment that would affect bees, their food, and their safety. To this end, gardens of bee-friendly plants were planted. Students took time to dig up roots, rocks, and debris and carefully prepare the beds. The seeds were planted, watered, and nurtured in hopes of providing food and security for the hives. So at Francis Kelsey Secondary, we had an Indigenous Heritage Day and a Thunderbird Pavilion. Recently, the school community at Francis Kelsey marked Indigenous Heritage Day with a tremendous celebration and the official opening of the Thunderbird Pavilion and community space. The community was treated to a number of activities, including a traditional salmon cook by members of the Malahat Nation, displays of carvings, paintings, and great discussions with an expert traditional artist, and knowledge of local plants and their uses shared, as well as weaving in both cedar and wool was highlighted, and members of the local Cowichan Valley Métis Nation also shared their history with displays of impressive sewing and beadwork inside the teepee. Another hit with the students was the axe throwing station happening next to the Métis canoe. Just imagine that. The day also marked the official opening of the Thunderbird Pavilion and community space. The Thunderbird Pavilion is the cornerstone of this newly created community space. In the works for over a year, this space boasts a large garden, salmon cook pit, and the new pavilion. This space was envisioned by students, staff, and community as a place-making initiative in a location where all members of the community could gather and celebrate. We'd like to thank that this was a generous donation, beautiful wood by the Malahat Nation, and construction and design expertise by Kinsel Timber Systems, Ltd. And although the Thunderbird Pavilion has been in the works for over a year and a half, it was constructed in just one day on Tuesday, April the 16th. And this project saw Kinsel Timber Systems master builders share their expertise and guidance with the Francis Kelsey students, who together were able to construct the beautiful structure. Just a couple more. Central Schools, Alexander Elementary. I don't think there's photos for this one. Little hands make quick work at the Cowichan Agricultural Seed Hub, located at the Cowichan Incubator Seed Farm on Beverly Street. As students from Alexander Elementary School learn to seed squash, cucumbers, and melons. The Cowichan Green community staff has been busy working with the classes, making seedling mix, seeding in trays, direct seeding different direct seeding different varieties of beans in the field, and transplanting broccoli and radishes. And check out their website to learn more about the CGC's agricultural educational initiatives. And lastly, which we have photos for, would be our Seaball First People's Discovery Garden. The First People's Discovery Garden is starting to come to fruition at Cowichan Valley Open Learning Center and the Grove. They were fortunate to receive a grant from the TD Friends of the Environment Foundation to assist with this endeavor. Both the Grove Distributed Learning Program and the Cowichan Valley Open Learning Programs are working together to create this beautiful space and place. With the help of Della Rice and her co-partner, a student from their homeschooling community, they will be creating a space to not only discover and harvest local indigenous plants and vegetables, but also a space and place that can feed the community for several months each year. They plan to create a garden that is self-sufficient and very productive, and in the future they look to continue to create partnerships within the community and to grow and expand this to meet the needs of the Carnsmore community and school community. And there is much, much more happening in the school district, but those would just be some highlights.
It's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing and completely throughout the district, which is really wonderful to see. Moving to 7.1.3, school calendar 2019-2020, superintendent.
Okay, so what you have attached in your package would be a calendar that would be a 3-year calendar that would have been approved last year. We're in the second year of that. And so during that original motion, it was noted during that time that the 3 teacher district development days would need to be confirmed on an annual basis. And so this year, there's only one to note, and this was through our consultation process with CVTA, that the non-instructional day would have had been earlier, May the 8th, and it has now been adjusted to Friday, May the 1st. So we wanted to just share that second year of this calendar with that revised amendment on the school calendar that has already been submitted to the ministry and approved.
Thank you. Trustee Hutchins?
Through you to the superintendent, why actually define each semester in the bottom as 89 days semester 1 and 89 days semester 2, but in the calendar we don't actually show the end of semester 1 and the beginning of semester 2. And is there a reason why we can't show that?
Superintendent?
I think we could. I think this is really just an overview, but also making note in the footnotes that we have a balanced semester 1 and a balanced semester 2. But we certainly could put that in there. But I think that when we start putting too many details, it becomes very long. But I also think that this would have been approved as a 3-year calendar a year ago. And the only note of amendment would be consulting with the CVTA around those teachers' instructional days. But in the future, when we look at that maybe in a year from now, we could certainly look at that.
Thank you. Any further comments from trustees? Okay, moving to board action 7.2. First is student travel. Superintendent, did you wish to talk about that?
I would.
For the Francis Kelsey Secondary School trip to London during spring break 2020.
Yes, I just want to make a comment that we have an AP 261, that is education trips out of province and country. And so at this point, we would be looking at this particular trip next year during spring break 2020, and that it would be an 8-day trip over spring break, taking 20 to 25 students with 3 supervisors. So at this point, we would be looking at approval in principle for that trip. But there are many processes after that approval in principle that staff would have to go through in order to receive a final approval on this trip.
Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Thorne. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to 7.2.2, field trips to the United States.
It was brought to my attention by a number of principals who would be interested in looking at lifting the temporary suspension of field trips to the United States. There are many sporting trips, there are many band trips that have taken place in the past. So they are interested in removing that temporary suspension. But there's also a point to note here that the International Student Program, that they have a variety of reasons why they would want to lift that as well. And I've documented that here by sharing that with regard to biometrics, which really is a biological passport, that if any of our international students would require that, they would actually have to go to Tacoma in order to receive that type of a passport. And so it would be really important to our international student program because of that fact. I asked a number of districts to see if they had a ban on U.S. travel, and the information that I received from the majority of them, that they currently do not have a ban around U.S. travel. So I'd like to have the board look at the recommendation of rescinding the temporary suspension of field trips to the United States at this time.
Thank you, trustee
I'd like to move that.
Moved by trustee Donovan, seconded by trustee Hutchins. Trustee Brown.
One quick question. So, of course, originally it was a concern that not all the kids would make it through the U.S. Customs, right? So, if a child, for whatever reason, couldn't pass customs, is there always an adult hanging back in case not all the kids can get on and all that stuff?
Always there will be a supervisor, and it's part of our AP in terms of how we manage field trips, in terms of the safety of our learners.
Thank you, trustee DeGroot.
It wasn't just students that we were concerned about. There was at least, I think, 3 or 4 cases where people who were the chaperones were turned back, which meant that the trip couldn't go forward. So that was the biggest concern, I think.
And there's no concern on.
There is no concern at this point in time, and I think that the passport, around this biological passport, is something now that many of our supervisors and our students have, and so that's helps us to be aware if there could be any challenges at work.
Thank you, trustee Donovan.
That has been a major concern why ever since that crazy man got elected, it's been hard for our kids to get back and forth. They've actually been turned back or held. The safety has always been key for our kids, and travel to be detained in any way, shape, or form can be traumatic. So that's my only concern.
Sounds as if the concerns have really been lifted provincially. So we have a motion on the table. Are you ready to vote? All those in favor? Motion. Those opposed? Those abstaining? We're not supposed to abstain. Okay, motion carries. Moving to 7.2.3, National Indigenous Peoples Day, June the 21st, 2019. Superintendent.
I would just like to promote that it is a day that we always honor, and I'm hopeful that the board would consider recognizing that as a National Indigenous Peoples Day on June the 21st and formalizing that.
Thank you. Is there someone willing to move that? Moved by trustee Donovan, seconded by trustee Groot. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item 7.2.4, bar courses. Superintendent.
We have 3 new board authorized authority courses coming forward, English language learners. The first one is developing, the second one is expanding, and the third one is consolidating. Our team has put that forward, supported the writing of this, and so I'm hopeful that the board will consider approving the following courses for implementation starting September of 2019.
Thank you. Trustee DeGroot. So moved. Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Donovan. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item 8, Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Sandquist.
Thank you. I have 2 items for action this evening. The first is a rezoning application for cannabis retailer at 2763 Beverly Street. It's included in the package. is located approximately 300 meters away from the property line of the proposed Cowichan Secondary School. It's in the Thrifties Mall. And they have asked for board feedback. We have been asked as staff to develop policy around appropriate distance from a school site. The superintendent has surveyed many other school districts around the limits that they are using for setback. And I really like what's been received from Dr. Hasselback's recommendation, the former medical health officer for Central Vancouver Island, who recommends that in the absence of a natural barrier, that the school district file objection to any site-specific zoning within 300 meters of schools, and evaluate any that are within 300 to 600 meters.
So in this case, how would you interpret that?
I would interpret that there's no natural barrier between the potential school site for Cowichan Secondary and the proposed location. It is in the, I believe it's in what used to be known as the movie video rental store, right beside the pizza distributor in the mall there. It's right there, so it is certainly within sightline and proximity to the property line of the proposed Cowichan Secondary School.
Thank you. Trustee Thorne.
Did we not, if memory serves, a couple of years ago, put a motion on the table with the same, almost the same wording, but it was then, at that time, it was the marijuana dispensaries, that they not be allowed within X amount of meters.
Mr. Silver.
I believe the correspondence to the municipalities that went out from the board was suggesting 600 meters. That is what you've been utilizing to date.
Okay, Trustee Kimber and then Trustee Crocker.
I really don't think it's a good idea to have it within sight lines of our high school right beside the pizza place they're all gonna go frequent for lunch. So I don't know whether we can make a motion that says we don't like it.
Yes, we can make that motion, and in fact, you could make
You
that
can
motion.
make that motion.
I would make the motion that we don't, that we wouldn't approve it. We don't support that.
Okay, moved by Trustee Kemble, seconded by Trustee Thorne. Conversation, Trustee Crocker.
I can't get it to measure 300 meters. I got 275 to 286 meters. I just think it's just too tight. I think it's within 300 meters. And yeah, that's that.
Okay, any other conversation from anyone? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Unanimous, thank you. Moving
You got another comment there.
sorry?
I
Trustee Crocker.
would like us to perhaps consider the comments by the former. And make that a policy for us.
Take that through to the policy
Yes.
staff group that is developing that policy. Thank you.
Do you need a motion for that?
I think so.
I second that.
Okay, move that Paul Hasselback's comments around location of cannabis stores be entered into our policy.
Yep.
Okay, moved by Trustee Pierce, seconded by Trustee Croft. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Back to the board agenda and to Mr. Sandquist on annual budget.
Thank you. The budget marathon hopefully is coming to the finish line this evening. We began in February. We certainly began in earnest in March and went through the month of April with a significant number of meetings. So I certainly want to thank the trustees for their commitment to that process. I believe we seemed to be meeting almost every other day on the budget. As well, we had public meetings and public feedback, and we had partner group input that was considered. We'd just also like to thank the senior staff for their availability through this process, and of course to our finance team, Karen and Alicia, who's new, which I'm not sure you've met, but she's our new budget clerk, who also got us here. So we are at the place where the Board Education and Business Committee has recommended the board adopt the annual budget. The amount of the budget is $101,379,377, and that is a consolidation of all of the funds of the board, from special purpose to capital and operating. So it's before you for consideration.
Thank you. And of course, the first reading is not debatable, so we need someone to move the first reading. Moved by trustee DeGroot, second by trustee Croft. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to second reading. Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the third reading, which as it tells us that we can consider the 3 readings this evening. Moved by trustee Dolman, seconded by trustee Kemlin. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the third and final reading of the budget. Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving to item 9, committees and outside. Oh,
Yay,
Yes.
another budget.
okay. And thank you for stopping us there
Oh, sorry.
momentarily, because we did not think of staff. And I should feel, I guess, prepared to thank, first of all, our secretary treasurer, who spent countless days and weekends and evenings preparing the budget. Also, our district staff and the staff directly related to the budget as well. I see Karen is here, so we can thank her, but really it is a team effort as well, and we really thank all of you for working so diligently on that. Okay, now moving to committees and outside organizations. The first, minutes of April 23rd, BEBC, trustee Hutchins.
I was just trying to find something on the agenda, and I got off the main agenda, so I'll find it very quick. The Board of Education of School District 79 received the minutes of the April 23rd, 2019 Board of Education and Business Committee meeting. So moved.
Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee DeGroot. All those in favor, motion carries. Summary of the April 16, 2019 Advisory Committee meeting. Let's see, I chaired that, so I will move that the Board of Education of School District 79, Calhoun Valley receives a summary of the April 16, 2019 Advisory Committee meeting. Moved by Spilsbury, seconded by Thorne. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to highlights of the May 8th, 2019 DSAC meeting. Trustee Croft? Did you know? Pardon?
No, that's not me.
Oh, okay. Trustee DeGroot.
That the Board of Education received the highlights of the May 8th, 2019 DSAC meeting.
Thank you. Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor, motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item D, Board Education and Business Committee -- Early Learning Committee Terms of Reference. Okay, moved by trustee Spilsbury, seconded by trustee Hutchins. Any comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item 10, upcoming meetings and events, and the schedule for our meetings are on page 49. Any comments from anybody? I would just like to add the Vista Fall Conference and Business Meeting, which is October 25th and 26th, 2019 in Port Alberni. And I understand that there are 3 locations where people could have accommodation, and the Numbers are low for the preferred hotel. So if people would let Claire know as soon as possible about your attendance so that we can book in the Barclay Hotel. Okay. And
Is that not the same weekend as?
it is the same as Provincial Council, that's right. So Trustee DeGroot won't be able to attend.
We'll text you.
Oh, thanks.
Send pictures.
Anything else on the schedule of meetings? Okay, moving to item B, year-end functions on page 50. And Trustee DeGroot, you have some comments about the year-end barbecue and the retirement reception.
So, first of all, if you are planning on going to the year-end barbecue, could you please fill in the little thing that you got in the email? There's a little, go into the calendar, click on it, and tell them that you're coming. Or sign up in the staff room, take your pick. The district retirement reception is June 26th. You've got all of you have received an invitation today. And I will be sending you an email giving you a list of wonderful jobs that you can perform. And if you could please let me know what you can do. And I will be sending it by tomorrow morning. And if you could let me know by the weekend, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, and we're on graduation schedule, so thank you to everyone for attending and speaking for attendance certificates or whatever the schools ask. Moving back to the agenda, item 11, new business, A, flagpoles. We know we have one flagpole up. However, we don't have a Canadian flag up when we put that flag up. As well, I attended the flag raising ceremony at VIU last month, and it was very honoring, I thought, and impactful on me, that they were now flying because they were given at the ceremony a flag by Cowichan Tribes and a flag by the Métis Nation. So I'm thinking that we need more than one flagpole. And we may need 4 if we are going to honor our Indigenous territory, which would be Cowichan Tribes flag, Métis, yes. Trustee
We have
Hutchins.
more than one tribe that would have to be on
But is this not the Cowichan Tribes land itself here?
it. For a district service,
Yes, we do serve
6%.
7 actually, plus
7.
Métis, yeah. Okay, let's be thinking about it, Trustee Crum.
Well, if we don't want to put up one flagpole per group, because in the future we could get tapped to put up more, maybe we could look at a bit of a schedule as to how we could represent everybody over 1 flagpole or 4 flagpoles, like for instance this Aboriginal Month Week. That would be, we know that's coming every year.
Perhaps we want to staff report, maybe?
I would like to know.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'd like to move that staff take a look at those possibilities regarding flags, flagpoles, and scheduling, and report back to us.
Thank you. Moved by Trustee Cross, seconded by Trustee
Just a comment too.
Stone.
On the whole community, the flag that we raised at VIU, Madam Chair, all 6 nations are represented on that flag.
Thank
Also, it's
you.
not a Cowichan tribe flag.
It is, but we're all amalgamated. And it's a language thing.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Trustee Hutchins?
So just, is it the Holcomb Treaty flag? So we wouldn't include the Malahat, what we did it
They're all there.
at, the Malahat is?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to refer it to staff to investigate and to come back to us. Trustee Cameron, did you have something? No. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, moving to item 12, question period. And Chris.
Thank you for the report regarding the violence in the workplace. And adults, primarily parents, have been recorded in the past as being the one who has admitted violent threat incidents against teachers or staff, usually in front of students? And will your violence threat education and prevention efforts this?
I'm sorry, would you say the question again?
With the violence threat education and prevention that you're working on as a district, will it also address the fact that it's also adults that are involved in the violence threat reports?
I think we hear your concern, and I think that all of our interest in supporting our staff would include parent contact as well. Thank you.
And if I may, both teacher locals, both the LCTA and the CDTA, which make up the CDTF, all these letters to remember, we would welcome involvement with the District 79 mental health committees.
Thank you. We'll form that into a question, and it will be duly noted. Thank you. Any further questions from our audience? Right. Sorry, we have one piece of correspondence that I'm narrowing by, apparently. Oh. Okay, so item 11, there is one Cowichan letter to us. And the letter asks us to sign as an organization to send to the other local governments about urgency around climate change. It also includes another section asking us to be part of a climate, also planning a Cowichan climate summit for the early fall, and would like the school board to be part of it in some way. Please be in touch with any initial thoughts about that. So we have like two requests in there. The first is around adding our name, and if you could read the letter now, in case people haven't had the chance just to read it. And this letter is being sent by organizations to the local governments. I have some concern around us sending a note or adding our names as a local government body ourselves to another local government body. However, let's talk about it. Trustee Hutchins?
I share your concerns. This is a letter that I believe that would be sent to a number of what they would consider NGOs, but we're not an NGO, we're a local government. I support their initiative, but I think we should be on the recipient end of this letter because we do have a role to play. We obviously don't have the same responsibility to the land use planning, but we have I understand from Mr. Sanquist, the largest employee base. I believe as a local government, we have probably the largest number of buildings that are responsible for heat and fossil fuel consumption. I believe we're the only local government that has actually converted one of our institutions from fossil fuels to wood burning in a Cowichan High School. So I know that we used to have an employee that was Brian, I forget his last name, but highly involved with mitigating fossil fuel consumption. So as one of the major building owners and larger employees of all industry employees and the rest of us citizens that are creating climate change, I think I'm not sure we should agree to signing this letter, but we welcome this letter as a member of local governments in the Cowichan Valley for us consideration of how we can do our part. The first question is, as I was talking to an individual at, it's just about Tesla.
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 Yeah. Oh,
And
wonderful.
at a school, where would you plug it
That's-
in? In the couch and down. I mean,
Well,
that's one thing that we could do, I mean, just.
Yeah.
Anyway. So
Thank
you need
you.
a motion to that effect.
okay, before we go any further, we need a motion to go past 6 P.M. Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, back to
So
trustee
I'd
Hutchins.
like to move that we respectfully decline the opportunity to sign this letter. However, we request that the letter be actually sent to us as we have a role to play in mitigating climate change in the Couch as a local government.
Thank you. Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Croft. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Do we want to do something about the invitation to work with them on climate change summit? Motion, trustee Hutchins?
And we welcome the opportunity to work with them on climate change summit.
Is that a friendly amendment?
No,
Or
I
last
think we
line?
should make it
This is
separate.
Okay. Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Croft. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Which brings me to another sort of related topic, and that is around local governments and how in the recent days there has been the contest on the local radio around local governments, and the Board of Education is not included as a local government. So in attempting to make the local radio station aware of that local government issue, I discovered that it was actually not initiated by them, but it was initiated by UBCM that created a local governance awareness week. I went from there to the BCSDA asking what they were doing around recognizing boards of education as local government bodies and letting communities know and recognize that fact. They said, funnily enough, we're meeting with UBCM at the end of the month, as we normally do, and so if you could send in something on behalf of your board or Vista, that they would take that forward. So I'm wondering if we could pass a motion to indicate to BCSDA our request that they convey to UBCM that boards of education are local government bodies and that boards of education should be included in UBCM and Local Government Awareness Week. Trustee Thorpe, moved by trustee Thorpe, seconded by trustee Penrose, was that, or trustee Penrose? Any comments or discussion? Trustee Thorpe.
This is something I've been saying for a long time, that this body should be recognized as a valued participant in local government, because we make decisions every day on education for children, our most prized possession. And I think it's long, long overdue that the school board is not recognized as part of the local governments.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to adjournment. Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Dolan. All those in favor? Motion carries. 2 minutes and we're back to close, please.